Hello, my name is Blade, and today I'll be reviewing Backrooms, but I think for this review, a different location might be more fitting. That's more fitting, right? So, if this is your first review with me, I usually like to give context as to how I go into the movie because I do think that is important to like if you're going to review a movie, I think the audience should know like what your expectations are, like what your relationship to the thing is. So I want to get out of the way that I'm very much coming into this movie as a fan. And when I say fan, I don't necessarily even mean like the idea or the concept of the Backrooms. I'm specifically like a fan of the director, Kane Parsons, Kane Pixels, however you want to say it. I'm a big fan of not only his Backrooms series, but his work in general. I also love like The Oldest View, and I like the his music stuff. So I'm very much coming into this like as somebody familiar with the pre-existing work and as a fan. That being said, I also want to say you will find no criticism here that this isn't the um, other type of Backrooms. I'm coming into this with the knowledge that this is based off of Kane Parsons' specific like Backrooms lore, his original series, not like the big community internet dream core like levels Backrooms. Nothing wrong with that. It's just honestly not my personal cup of tea. And that's just not what this movie is. So I'm not going to be coming at it with any critiques that it's not that because that's not what it's trying to be. But without further ado, let's get into the official review. And I'm giving a little bit more of an intro here because the description of this movie is quite short. It is simply a strange doorway appears in the basement of a furniture showroom. Now, that is really brief, but honestly, like, that is the gist of what the plot is boiled down. And honestly, I think if you're somebody who's like unfamiliar with Kane's series or just the Backrooms in general, like that is the gist of the movie and is all you should know going into it. So I guess jumping off that, that should be my first comment about this movie. I didn't write that in my notes, but what I just said reminded me of that. Off the bat, if you're concerned about watching this movie, or if you watch the movie, I think you'll agree that you do not have to be familiar with the source material or even the Backrooms as an idea to watch this movie. It definitely exists as its own separate entity. There's like Easter eggs and stuff in there that I think will be exciting as a fan, but you don't need that information to enjoy this or understand it. So, my first comment that I have to say about this movie, because once again, if you're unfamiliar with me, I do like to get into the actual like filmmaking and everything of movies. I'm a small independent filmmaker myself, so my reviews aren't just like me, like basically like I liked it or I didn't like it, and here's like a plot by plot point of what happened. No, like really, I get into it. So my first thing that I wrote down is the direction and the cinematography is really good. As I said, am familiar with Kane, but up until this point, all his projects were worked on through Blender, or there is like here and there, I think there is some actual like footage, but now he has a full film crew, budget, everything at his disposal, and I have to say I was extremely pleasantly surprised to be kind of introduced to his full on vision and visual language. And I have to say, I think it's pretty strong. I don't say that with bias towards him. I really genuinely think this is some extremely like I don't like to use the word competent because that sounds like a like I'm saying I don't know, that might sound like pretentious, but it's really truly like competent filmmaking. There are several shots that I thought were cool to look at in terms of I don't think there's not a lot of fancy camera tricks, but I also don't think this movie would be the place for that either. But what I mean is like I really enjoyed the way he framed things, the way like subjects were centered or not centered. Even the way the actual Backrooms like architecture was filmed, like there was a good sense of like the unfolding nature of it. But I was really particularly impressed by the stuff that wasn't in the Backrooms, like the actual real world stuff. I love the way he shot stuff. The specifically the way he used the sky and the way he filmed like cityscapes or just like the sky or like backshots were really striking and nice to look at. But what I really enjoyed about his filmmaking, that I don't really know the proper way to describe this, but was like there was a certain vibrancy to the filmmaking that I liked. Like the colors were really strong, and I don't necessarily mean bright and vivid as in like it's a bright movie per se. Like not all the colors are loud, but all the colors are rich. Like whatever tone the colors on screen might be, they're all really rich, and there was a certain flatness to things. Now, I'm not saying flatness as a diss. Like you might say things are flat in other movies, because the total image comes across as flat. But I mean more so that every single thing in the composition of the image had like just a nice sleek flat look, almost like stickered on, that created something really nice to look at, and the colors were strong. And also, on that note, what I found to be really interesting about this movie is I am very familiar with analog horror. I guess I should have said that in the beginning too, that I'm also coming to this as someone who really loves analog horror. There's several analog horror series that I love. So I'm familiar with the way that operates and looks, and also obviously like Kane's way of doing it. But what I found to be interesting was to see it on the big screen. I was like, for some people, this is going to be their first taste of that. And I can imagine for some people, it's probably going to feel like really cool, unique, and different. Which, not to say that it didn't to me, but like, you know what I mean? Like, somebody who's not unfamiliar with it is going to feel like, whoa, like, where did this come from? I've never seen something like this before. So I think this is a horror movie, so I should discuss like the horror elements in the movie. I think this movie has a really good sense of tension and dread. I saw some commentary online that some people felt like it didn't hold that, but for just me personally and how I consumed it, I did feel that dread. I noticed there was several times in the movie where like maybe things would come to like things would slow down for a second, so I had the chance to slow down. And I would notice that I would like let go of this tension that I didn't even know I was holding. Like it, and it was very immersive. Like I got really like sucked into the world of the movie and like what was happening on screen. So when it would give you like that second to pause, I'd be like, whoa, I didn't even know I was holding on to all of that like dread. Now I am a little fearful that there's going to be commentary on this movie of like it wasn't scary enough or it wasn't like horrific enough. And I disagree in the sense that I do think there are, like, if you're a horror person and you're seeking out like more traditional, like, ooh, like spooky scary, there's some moments in here that are definitely gonna do that. Like, oh my god, like what's behind that, what's around the corner, and like deaths that happen that are like, where you do get that visceral horror feeling. But it's just not that type of movie the whole way around. I mean, I don't think it needs to be. I don't think it's that type of movie. I do think this is a horror movie that has, as I'll get into later, some emotional stuff. It's driven by character, it's driven by story. It's not driven by the horror. I think the horror is just the vehicle for those things. But I'm hopeful that that won't be too much of a like critique about this movie, though, because I did notice in a letterbox review that I read before this and in my own experience that the movie theater was dead silent. Like, I think people were immersed in the movie, and when I was leaving the theater, I didn't hear any comments like that, and people were discussing it. So I'm hoping that that's gonna come across as not the type of movie, but I can see how it's not gonna work for some people because they're looking for more of that. But as far as I'm concerned, I liked the horror elements. I really think there was a great sense of tension and dread that built up at times and then still like lingered until you get that relief moment. I think it's impossible to talk about this movie and not talk about the production design. I think it's been talked about kind of seemingly everywhere, like when Kane is interviewed or like the cast is interviewed, or just any conversation around this movie where they talk about the 30,000 square foot set of them building the Backrooms. And when you hear that, it is crazy to hear. But then when you see the movie, there's some points where you're just like, whoa, like I could like no wonder it you don't really understand the concept of 30,000 square feet until you watch the movie, and specifically one scene. I won't spoil it, but there's a scene that's kind of towards the end where Renate Reinsve's character will just say ends up in a space and you're like, whoa, like that's great. It reminds me of a scene that's in the series. It was cool to see like a real life set version of that type of thing. But I'd have to comment on how amazing and well done the production design is. Like I think not only did they replicate I'm sure his vision so well, but it's just really truly a spectacle to look at. There are some scenes that are horrific because of what's happening. Like I think I could say this without spoilers. Like there's a couple chase scenes and you're equally experiencing the dread and the tension of the chasing while also being like, whoa, like the stuff that you're seeing and the stuff that's passing by I was just like, holy shit. And a part of me was like, is this CGI? Like this particular part? But I was like, no, if they built a 30,000 square foot set, this all has to be real. So I was like, whoa, like I won't comment on the things that are seen. I think I want to leave that for you to experience for yourself if you haven't seen the movie. But I was like, wow, the production sign is really good. This is a May release horror movie, so I don't know what its chances are, but this movie genuinely deserves a at least a nomination at the Oscars for production design, because it's just that I think it's extremely genuinely impressive. I really hope A24 does a production design campaign for this movie, because it's wow. So next up in my notes, I just wrote unanswered questions slash avoiding certain things. I just wrote that down quickly because I think I saw some commentary that I think I disagree with, that the third act of the movie explains too much. I didn't find that to be the case. If anything, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and that was something I went into this movie thinking. I was like, as a fan of the series, like how many questions will be answered? And I was delighted to find really nothing. There is the company that is in the movie. If you're familiar with if you're familiar with the series, you know, Async, there is a pretty big question that is answered about that company. But as far as like the Backrooms itself, or like anything going on like really like around it and stuff like that, there are no questions answered. So I just wanted to put that in there because I think I just disagree with that commentary in the third act. I think people are saying that more because of the characters, but not the cosmic horror element of it. The cosmic horror element is very much kept intact, and that's what I like to see in my cosmic horror. I think cosmic horror works best when there are no questions answered. So, lastly, before I move on to spoilers, now typically in my reviews, I like to give a disclaimer at the beginning about there being spoiler free sections, spoilers, and closing notes. But what I have to say, spoiler wise, is so minimal, I just didn't feel the need to. But there will be a timestamp and a warning before I get into that, so you can avoid it. But I just didn't think it was necessary because I don't have that much to say in spoiler territory. But my last note before I do that is I just really need to nerd out for a second. You could also skip over this part if you don't want to see me nerd out. But I had the biggest grin on my face when the movie started playing, and when, like, I won't say what the first shot is, but I don't know, like, I just thought it was cool. As somebody who is a big analog horror fan and, like, a champion of people creating stuff online and, like, paving their own way, and just having been a fan of this for so long, seeing it on the big screen was so cool, and just, like, I don't know, like, it was just really sick to see that. But more specifically with analog horror, I think I can say this without being a spoiler. It's in the trailer, and it's not really like a spoilery thing. There's some found footage elements in the movie, but what I thought was really cool is they really felt like, especially the opening of the movie, really feels like you're watching an analog horror that you would see like scrolling on TikTok or posted on YouTube, but on the big screen. And to see that style of horror represented in its purest form on the big screen was really cool. Like, because there's movies like Skinamarink that kind of take an analog horror like approach, but adapted to like operate more like a movie. Now, don't get me wrong, Skinamarink is still very unique in its delivery style and its presentation, but it's not like pure analog horror. There's some moments in this that are straight up like analog horror. To see that on the big screen, I just thought was really, really cool. I like that Kane had the understanding of like, I know this works. I know why this is horrific. I know why this is scary. And I'm going to put it just like that on the big screen with a bigger budget, of course. But like, I'm going to put it like that on the big screen. And I think it just speaks to Gen Z filmmaking coming in. That's how it came into the internet for that reason. And it showed that it works. And I'm glad that somebody was like, this can also work on the big screen. I'm making this big budget movie, but I'm going to stay true to also what I know as well. All right, I don't have that much to say in spoiler territory, but if you don't want any spoilers, then turn away now, because I will be getting into very brief little spoiler commentary. So the only thing I really want to discuss in spoiler territory is just that I enjoyed the thematic elements of the movie, but I feel like I can't really talk about that without directly spoiling the movie. I thought it was cool that he decided to not just focus on like the cosmic horror and like confusing nature of the Backrooms, but also have these characters who have actual, you know, inner turmoils and things going on. And I thought that was also a good way to take the idea and the concept of the Backrooms and uh, put some sort of thematic purpose into it, which is the main character, Clark. He, has some problems with himself. We don't really get too many details on like what has gone on in his life and his relationship. His wife left him and like kept the house. But beyond that, that's all we really know. But it's clear that he doesn't take responsibility for his own issues, and he's like trapped in his own head. And I don't think me saying that, I don't think I have to explain how the Backrooms can be very representative of that. He goes into this mess, just like the mess of his mind. That's even used, the term mess is used in the movie. And he has this therapist, played by Renate Reinsve, who is like trying to help him with his mess, and as she literally later on goes into the back rooms to save him from his own mess. And his own mess ends up consuming him literally and figuratively. And I just thought that was a really nice touch to do that. I appreciate stuff like that. I always like a metaphor or symbolism in movies, but when it's used the right way, when it's not just done for the sake of doing it. And that wasn't the case here, and I really liked that. Also, this is two very small things. I just want to say, there was a scene at the right start of the movie that I really enjoyed, that Kane was doing something kind of subversive. Now, I don't know if he did this subversively, like on purpose, but that scene right at the jump, when before this like entity starts to chase this character that we're following, a door opens, and that's like the like the creature or whatever it is coming. And I thought that was subversive for two reasons. One, I think we're expecting something to like come around the corner, but B, I don't really think he's done anything like that in The Oldest View nor The Backroom. So it was also subversive to me, someone who's used to his style, where I didn't see that being the way. Also, to nerd out one last time, the first thing of the movie, the first thing we see the movie being an async logo, just had me like, I just thought it was cool. Sorry, it's nerding out a little bit. So yeah, those are my thoughts, comments, critiques, even though I didn't really have any, of Backrooms. I do think for some people this movie isn't going to work, and not for the movie itself, but because it is like more of a immersive, slow burn cosmic horror experience, and that's just like tale as old as time. That doesn't work for everybody, and people, I think some people are gonna want different things out of this movie. But ultimately, for me, this movie did work. I thought his direction, his cinematography, his like filmmaking inklings and inclinations were really good. I think he made a solid movie, and as someone who's followed his work, I'm really proud to see it. I know some people are like, oh, it's not scary enough or whatever, but if I can find it, I'll put it in here. There's a really great TikTok that like explained this idea well of like you can't be mad at something for not being what you want it to be. Like you have to judge it at what it is, and that's my take on that.
I saw a quote on Tumblr that said, "Is the writing bad, or are you trying to order a milkshake from Home Depot?" And nothing has spoken to me more about how I feel about some discourse about some movies or TV shows. Like, I feel like people are not watching the show or the movie for what it is. And then they're trying to, like, real life logic brain it into making it make sense or making it into the movie that they wanted to see and not what the movie is.
But yeah, that's what I thought of Backrooms. And I just want to say really quickly, you can scroll past this if you don't want to hear it or if you think it's cringy. But I did something similar in my Obsession video, and I just have to say it here again, especially as somebody who really loves The Oldest View and Backrooms. I'm really proud of Kane. I was nerding out in that movie theater. I had a big grin on my face, basically all the way up until a certain point, and I got scared. But like I had a big grin on my face watching the movie start to play, and like it just, and I'll be honest, I even took a picture of the screen when it said directed by Kane Parsons. I just think it's so cool, and I think right now with like Iron Lung, Obsession, this movie, Talk to Me, Bring Her Back, anything else that I'm also forgetting, it's just really cool to see these people find their success. But on top of that, it's really cool as someone like myself who's a small filmmaker putting themselves out there on YouTube and trying to make their way. It's so inspiring to see it, and I'm just really happy to see it happening and like the success that it's finding, not just because people are going to the theater to support it, but people that because the work is actually good too. Yeah, I'm just really excited to see it. It makes my heart very happy, and I will be watching this movie again on $5 Tuesday because it was that good and I liked it. But that is enough of me rambling. That is my thoughts, comments, everything I have to say about Backrooms. If you enjoyed this video, what I have to say, I do reviews on this channel, but I also have my own work. I'm a small independent filmmaker. I just put out my first short, well, my first original, like, more long length short film, Glimmer, last month in April, and then I also just put out a performance art film as well a few days ago called Invisible Ink. So that's what I do here. Consider subscribing, liking, commenting, interacting, whatever the algorithm wants me to say. But as for now, that's all. I will see you in the next one. Hopefully I won't be stuck in the back rooms by the next video.